Once I get the controls. Get control. Control. Do you ever have a game that looks like it's something that you would enjoy playing, but hold off because you are worried it isn't going to live up to your expectations? This has been me in Control. I almost bought this game when it was $60 because it looked awesome, but I made excuses not to. Then there was a $10 off coupon for Christmas from Epic, which again I considered using for this game, but still didn't get it. Then came to 33% off sale, and almost pulled the trigger again. Okay, you get the point. So eventually the game became free, and I couldn't believe it. I've been eyeballing this game for months, maybe over a year at that point, and I no longer had to buy it. Control was mine. I installed it that day, and that's it. There it sat, for months. What if Control is nowhere near what I thought it was going to be? What if it doesn't live up to the hype? What if it doesn't live up to my hype? I don't know if I have the time for a new game right now. Basically, every excuse I could think of not to play, I did. So, I finally opened the game. I figured I'd rather be disappointed with a game than worrying about it not being good. And I will say this, Control has been just about everything I could have asked for in a game. You start off the game as Jessie, entering a building and talking to a janitor. This janitor tells her to head upstairs for a job interview. Upon entering the director's office, you see what looks like a suicide and a gun on the ground. In Jessie's infinite wisdom, she decides to pick up said gun. And this is about where all the interesting paranormal, Twilight Zone-y shenanigans begin. Long story short, people within the building are being infected with the hiss. And the only thing keeping people safe from infection is a specifically built piece of equipment. And somehow, Jessie is not only immune to the hiss, but can actively cleanse it. Without getting into too many details, as uncovering lore is a large part of the game, Jessie finds out that this building is the Hangar 18 Area 51 for the paranormal. And a large portion of what is housed within the Federal Bureau of Control are actually paranormal objects. As Jessie progresses and comes across these objects of power, she will be able to make use of their powers as her own. For example, the first Oops gives her the power to telekinetically throw objects. Okay, I'm going to get my nitpicks out of the way with the controls first. And this isn't even aimed directly at Control. Can game makers decide if E or F is going to be the interaction button? Same thing with the spacebar jumping or dodging. I am fine with whatever is the conclusion, but can we quit changing it between games? I might have to write my rep in Congress about this issue. We need some legislation passed. Can I change the control layout? Sure, but how about we just agree on what it should be? Short tangent, but can you imagine the GOP and Democrats debating over E or F key usage? You're telling everyone that you are Team E, and people are mind blown that F key isn't your first choice? Then there is some weird dude like, I say we should just use tilde, which is just preposterous. We protest and counter-protest. Bedlam in the streets.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Now that I got that rant out of the way, gameplay for Control is excellent. There is something absolutely satisfying about telekinetically ripping a chunk of wall or floor out, and then yeeting it directly through an enemy. While the gun felt a little on the weak side, when paired with your powers, balancing resource usage was actually a really good game mechanic. Gun run out of ammo? Chuck some desks. Telekinetic energy low? Start blasting. And if ever in a pinch, you can use a force wave ability as your melee attack that will damage and stagger enemies, allowing an easy way to dispose of them or to buy yourself time to find cover. There are some basic customization options available. The skill tree is mostly basic stat upgrades, with a few nodes opening up additional control of your abilities. I also found it interesting that you didn't level up based on XP, but on achievements within the game. Your gun, which starts out as a generic semi-auto pistol, has unlockable modes similar to other classic gun archetypes we have become accustomed to in shooters. You can equip 2 of these modes at a time. Then both gun modes and Jesse yourself have mod slots allowing slightly more customization. The stat changes are nothing crazy, just enough to maybe survive one more hit or regain energy 1 second quicker. One thing to note about Jesse, girl is not good at taking damage. She is the epitome of the glass cannon. While every enemy drops health returns, it can be difficult to close the distance when injured, forcing risks to be taken to collect the health, or taking super safe pot shots while hiding behind cover. And I can't say either strategy worked out better. When you die, you will be revived at the last save point and lose 10% of your currently held currency. The difficulty overall felt manageable. Combat could be punishing, but I didn't find myself frustrated with deaths often. And some of the puzzles were actually challenging. Most could be figured out if you look around the area a little, but I did have to Google a few. A lot of games I have played recently have made puzzles very simple, where it was more like another task to complete. Level design was top-notch. I really liked how the personality of an area changed based on infestation level, if it was before or after you cleansed the area, and what floor you were on. There is a massive difference in feel between the bland, literally timeless feel of the executive area, versus the cool to creepy ratio while viewing where the objects of power are kept. And I am not kidding about the timeless feeling of the wood-paneled walls, the mail tubes, the drink carts. I was actively searching for ashtrays for my first hour or so of playing. I was curious if I time warped back to somewhere between the late 50s or the early 80s. But I also saw usage of a Walkman and monochrome monitors on many of the desks. And if it wasn't for a memo about smartphones not working within the Bureau, I would have been convinced that Control was taking place sometime in the past. I also really liked that exploration within Control was rewarded. I can definitely have wanderlust in games looking for secrets, and I was rewarded considerably for doing so. Since the game takes part in one building, it does have a somewhat Metroidvania feel to it. As you progress, you gain higher level clearance cards, which will be usable to open rooms that were previously locked. I also want to give a thumbs up for the cutscenes and projectors found occasionally. The cutscenes involving Dr. Darling are one degree of uncanny valley from realism. These projector scenes almost appear live action, with some sort of filter to make it appear vintage or aged. The one thing I found weird about Control was the lack of boss fights. Most of the boss fights encountered were to introduce a new enemy type, or just an elite enemy. Or, where a boss fight seems like it should be, instead you would have something akin to an obstacle course focusing on learning a new ability. I have been trying to find something to really complain about with this game. So I guess I wanted a mini-map? I will 100% say this is on me, but I easily get turned around in games and could use some sort of direction. Maybe the fall damage too? The difference between a short fall not hurting and a deadly fall seemed pretty tight to the point where I didn't like jumping off of things. Or maybe if you try telekinetically launching something too soon after grabbing it that the targeting is a little finicky. Yeah, I feel like I'm grasping pretty hard to find negatives. After 10 hours of gameplay, I can say that Control is excellent. My fear of overhyping this game was absolutely unwarranted. The balance between power fantasy and being two-shot, some actual puzzle depth, the aesthetics creepy to cool ratio, the rewarding exploration, the weight of chucking a hunk of concrete telekinetically, engaging lore, really nice graphics. Seriously, if I had to work this hard to find negatives for a game, it should go without saying how good it is. Thanks for watching.